He said his mom was sick, needed help. That's why he had to stay overnight. Then I found out her funeral was 3 years ago. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's all be internet friends. He always said family came first. I liked that about him, still do in some twisted way. There was something old-fashioned in the way he spoke about his mother, like she was sacred, untouchable. The kind of woman who taught him how to be gentle, respectful, quiet in the face of pain. Her name was June. He never called her mom when he talked about her. Always June. Said she preferred it that way. That she was too independent for titles. I pictured her as sharp, maybe a little eccentric. A woman who wore long scarves indoors and drank red wine with every meal. We'd been dating just over a year. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who opened easily. But when he talked about June, the edges softened. He'd touch the photo in his wallet, black and white, folded at the corners, and say things like, "She used to play guitar," or "She made me swear I'd never marry someone boring." I asked to meet her once early on. He smiled, then looked away. "She's not well," he said. "It's not a good time." I didn't press because grief is sacred, and I believed him. The first time he left overnight, he said it was an emergency. Something about her heart acting up again. His voice was tight, breath clipped at the ends like he was trying not to panic. He called me from the road, said he was driving out to take care of things, that the hospital she preferred was hours away, that she hated ambulances. I offered to come with him, he said no. She wouldn't want anyone to see her like this, he said. He stayed 2 nights, barely texted. No calls, just a few short updates. She's resting. No change yet, long day. He came back on a Thursday afternoon, dark circles under his eyes and a bouquet of dahlias in his hand. "From my mom," he said, handing them to me like an apology. I remember thinking it was sweet. That even in crisis, he was thoughtful. That she must have really loved him to think of me from a hospital bed. We didn't talk much that night. He sat on the couch and stared at nothing. I curled against him and let him stay quiet. That's how it works when someone's hurting. You don't dig, you wait. I didn't know that was the start of something. I just thought it was love. I never pressed to visit. It felt wrong, invasive, like asking to enter a room where someone was still grieving. Every time I brought it up, even lightly, Marcus would shift, his jaw tightening, eyes dropping to the floor like the idea itself was painful. Once I asked if we could FaceTime her, just for a minute, just to say hi. He shook his head almost immediately. "She's not up for company," he said. "She barely lets me see her." Another time, I suggested we drop off food, even if we didn't stay. He rubbed his hand over his face and murmured something about her immune system, that the treatments made her sensitive to smells, to people, to sound. "She has bad days," he said. "Sometimes whole weeks." He teared up once just talking about it. We were in the car, stopped at a red light, and I'd mentioned something about holidays, how maybe this year we could visit both our families. He didn't answer at first. Then he said, low and hoarse, "I don't know if she'll make it to Christmas." I shut up after that. I told myself I was being selfish, that the right thing to do was give him space, support him from the edges, that maybe some people grieve in real time before the loss fully arrives. And every time he came back from one of his visits, tired, quiet, sometimes carrying her favorite flowers, I reminded myself that I was lucky. Because I was part of it. Because he let me in, even if only through the stories. Because love, real love, doesn't demand proof. Right? The overnight trips became regular. At first, it was once every couple months. Then once a month. Then more, always the same story. She's getting worse. Sometimes it was her lungs, sometimes her heart, sometimes just everything. "She asked for me," he'd say. "She doesn't like hospitals. She needs someone who knows what her good days look like." And I believed him. I started packing bags for him without being asked. Socks, clean shirts, travel-sized toothpaste. I made him little care packages, his favorite snacks, ginger tea, ibuprofen. Once I tucked in a card. Just a sticky note, really, with a doodle and a stupid joke we'd laughed about that week. He smiled when he found it. Said she laughed at it too. I pictured them sitting on her couch together, her reading it, him reading it to her smiling, asking questions about me. I imagined her liking me, being proud of him. He always came back the same, exhausted. quiet, but he never complained, never made me feel like it was a burden. He'd collapse into bed and hold me like I was the thing he needed to come back to. "You're the only one who understands," he whispered once, and that line wrapped around me like a promise. It never occurred to me that it might be a trap. I tried to surprise him once. It wasn't meant to be a confrontation, more like a gesture, a kind one, a small act of love in the middle of all the grief. He'd mentioned the neighborhood once vaguely, in passing. I'd remembered the street name, filed it away without realizing why. That day, he'd left early. Said June wasn't answering her phone, that he'd head over and see if she needed groceries or just company. He kissed my forehead and said he'd be gone overnight. An hour later, I baked banana bread, his favorite. Wrapped it in foil, tucked it in a tote bag with some soup, some tea, a scarf I thought she might like. Then I got in the car and drove to the address. The house was small, quiet, well kept. No signs of illness, no ramp, no medical van. Just a blue mailbox and trimmed hedges. I knocked once. Then twice. No answer. I waited 15 minutes. Checked my phone, no texts, no calls, knocked again. Still nothing. The curtains didn't move. The lights stayed off. I stood there holding that stupid tote bag until my arms ached, unsure whether to cry or laugh or scream. 3 hours later, he called. His voice was sharp, strained. "You crossed a line," he said. "What the hell were you thinking?" I stammered something about wanting to help, to see if she needed anything. I said I didn't mean to intrude. He didn't yell, but his silence between sentences cut deeper than any raised voice. "She didn't want to see anyone," he said finally, "and now she's humiliated." I hung up apologizing, not because I believed I was wrong, but because the guilt was already doing the work for him. The guilt ate me alive. Not all at once, not like fire, more like mold, quiet, creeping, spreading under surfaces I didn't realize were soft until they started to sink. I apologized again the next morning, made coffee, left a note on the counter, said I was sorry for not trusting him, sorry for not respecting June's privacy, sorry for overstepping. When he came home, he didn't look at me for the first 5 minutes. He dropped his bag by the door, took off his shoes like it hurt, sat down at the table and stared at his hands until I broke the silence with another apology. He sighed, rubbed his eyes, finally said, "You're the only one who gets it." That line again, it wrapped around me like a leash, a reward for obedience. He told me June had been devastated, that she barely spoke the rest of the night, that she was in one of her states, which he never fully explained but always made sound dangerous. I asked if she was okay. He nodded slowly. Said she would be, said time helps. I didn't ask again, I didn't drive by again, I didn't even look at the street on Google Maps, because he forgave me. And I clung to that like forgiveness was a sign of love instead of control. I met his coworker by accident, a firm mixer. Nothing fancy, just an after-hours thing at a bar near their office, where everyone wore slightly loosened ties and tried to sound relaxed about deadlines. Marcus wasn't thrilled about me coming, said it was boring, mostly small talk and finance jokes I wouldn't get. But I insisted, said I wanted to meet the people he spent half his life with. He introduced me as Tessa, my girlfriend, which made a few heads turn. That's when I saw her, Janelle. She smiled, polite and quick, the kind of smile that ends before it fully forms. Her eyes flicked between me and Marcus like she was still figuring out which one of us she should be looking at. He barely said her name. "Janelle," he mumbled, already turning toward another group. She didn't move, just stood there holding a glass of white wine like it was armor. I reached out, said it was nice to meet her. She nodded once, then glanced down at her phone and said something about needing to check on a work thing. She walked off before I could say anything else. I watched her disappear into the crowd. The back of her blouse wrinkled slightly, like she'd been gripping something tight all day. Marcus looped his arm around my waist and pulled me toward the bar. "She's just intense," he said, eyes forward. I didn't push. But I noted it, the look in her eyes, like she knew me, like she wished I didn't know her. A week later, he left again. Another emergency. Same tension in his voice. Same rushed explanation. This time it was her breathing, he said. "She's wheezing again, I don't like how it sounds." He threw a few things into a duffel bag while I stood in the doorway, holding out the tea I'd packed for him, the one he always said helped her sleep. He kissed my forehead, promised he'd be back by Sunday. I watched his taillights disappear down the street. That night I stayed in. No wine, no calls, just me on the couch, refreshing social feeds like a habit. My stomach felt wrong. Not panicked, just alert. Like my body knew something my brain didn't want to admit. I opened a browser, typed his last name, then his mother's. I didn't expect to find anything. It was supposed to be nothing. A way to calm myself down. To prove I was just spiraling again because he'd been quiet, because Janelle had looked at me like I was trespassing. But there it was. The obituary, her name, June Evelyn Carter, beloved mother of Marcus Carter, date of death. 3 years ago, private burial, no memorial, just a black and white photo, the same one he kept in his wallet. The one he said was taken last spring when her hair grew back after treatment. I stared at the screen, unblinking. The words didn't move. They didn't morph into something else. They just sat there, solid, final, like truth does when you finally find it. I thought it was a mistake, had to be, a reused name. Another June Carter, some older woman in a different town, with a son who happened to be named Marcus. A coincidence cruel enough to mimic truth. I went back to the search bar, refined it, added his hometown, his middle name. The result didn't change. June Evelyn Carter. Passed away 3 years ago. The obituary didn't give much. No cause, just the date, a list of surviving family. Marcus Carter, son. That line hit harder than the headline. I clicked through every link I could find. Scanned the archived pages. Cross-checked them against the address he'd once mumbled in passing. It was all there. The records, the burial site. Even a funeral home listing, closed to the public at the family's request. She'd been gone for 3 years. 3. I tried to remember what I was doing 3 years ago, where I'd lived, who I'd been. I hadn't even met Marcus yet. Which meant the first time he said, "She's having a bad day," she'd already been in the ground. I closed the laptop slowly, like maybe it wouldn't hurt as much if I moved gently. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because this wasn't the kind of betrayal that makes you sob. This was the kind that leaves you cold. Still, and full of questions no apology could answer. I checked again, I don't know how many times. Maybe 10, maybe more. I cleared the cache, switched browsers. Pulled out my old tablet just to see the page on a different screen, like the device would change the outcome. It didn't, it was her. Same photo, same name. Same son listed beneath her like a signature on her silence. I opened Marcus's wallet while he was gone. The picture of June was still there, worn from being handled, folded at the edges. He'd told me once it was recent. Said it was taken after her last round of chemo. That smile, he said, was the moment she told him she wanted to fight. She'd already been dead. Every time he talked about her favorite foods, her television habits, the way she liked the light in her bedroom around dusk, it was a performance. A resurrection. A calculated choice to pull her out of the ground and into our life, not to honor her but to use her. To cover something, someone. I started to shake, but not from fear, from anger, because grief is sacred. And he'd used it like camouflage. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to call, to scream, to throw the laptop across the room. But I didn't. I couldn't, not yet. Because some part of me still needed to know why. And more than that, who? Because if he wasn't going to see his dead mother, where the hell was he going? I pulled out my phone and started looking backward. Venmo transactions. Bank statements, old texts. His language never changed much. Emergency. Can't talk, sorry, but the dates mattered, the timestamps. The patterns. Most of his overnights clustered around the same neighborhoods, not where his mom had lived. Somewhere else. A zip code I didn't recognize. I followed the digital breadcrumbs. Lyft rides, food deliveries, once even a shared Netflix login he'd accidentally left open on our TV. One night, he'd paused in the middle of a series I'd never seen, and when I hit resume, it took me to a show I knew he'd never watch alone. I Googled the zip code. A residential street, far side of town. Near a small park I'd been to once. Then I searched it again. This time with a name, Janelle, his coworker, and there it was, a property record, full name, homeowner, Janelle Ford, and suddenly everything clicked into place. The look she gave me at the mixer. The way she disappeared when Marcus introduced me. The way his voice always softened when he said her name, like it was an afterthought when it never was. The man I loved wasn't grieving. He was hiding. I sent her a message. Nothing long, nothing dramatic, just one line. "Hey, just wondering how long you and Marcus have been seeing each other?" I sat there, thumb hovering over the screen after hitting send. Watched the little circle spin. Saw the word delivered. Then, a minute later, the read receipt, no reply, just the blue check marks. Cold, clean, final. I waited, an hour passed. Then, too, I refreshed the app, checked her profile. She hadn't blocked me. She just chose silence, which said more than any answer could have. If it was a mistake, she would have cleared it up. If it was nothing, she would have laughed. But she didn't. She read the question and decided I wasn't worth a response. That told me everything. He hadn't lied to both of us. He'd chosen which lie belonged to which woman. And right then, I decided I was done holding his secrets for him. I drove to her grave, not because I needed comfort. Not because I believed she had answers for me, because I needed to see it. The final proof. The thing that couldn't lie to my face or rewrite the timeline. The cemetery was quiet. Late afternoon, gray light cutting across polished stones. I followed the path until I found her, June Evelyn Carter. Beloved mother. 1957-2020. There was no photograph on the marker, no flowers, just the name etched into stone like it had been waiting for me to catch up. I stood there a long time, long enough to feel the truth settle. Then I knelt and placed a bouquet, nothing dramatic. White lilies. Simple, clean. The same kind Marcus once brought home, claiming she'd picked them out for me. Beside the bouquet, I laid a small garden shovel. Cheap, plastic, bright red, not to dig, just to make a point. Because while he'd buried her body 3 years ago, he'd been using her name ever since. To disappear, to deceive, to divide. I took a photo of the grave, then stood up, walked away without looking back, because I didn't come to mourn. I came to document. I took a photo of the grave, then a close-up of the headstone, the flowers, the dates, the name. I made sure the engraving was clear. No shadows, no blurs, just stone, truth, and time. Then I added more screenshots of the obituary, the public records, the property listing under Janelle Ford's name. The Google Map pin dropped exactly over her house. Next came the timestamps, text messages from Marcus claiming he was at the hospital or picking up prescriptions. I matched each one to a bank charge, a food order, a rideshare drop-off. Each contradiction fit perfectly. Each lie tucked neatly beside a receipt. I built it like a case file. Organized, precise. Photos of Marcus's car in Janelle's driveway, pulled from the edge of her Instagram story backgrounds. A restaurant selfie where the window reflection betrayed his presence. His jacket, his watch, the same one he wore when he left my apartment that night. And at the center of it all, the grave. The fixed point. The one thing that couldn't be moved, denied, or explained away. I arranged the collage on my laptop, clicked through it once, then again. There was no rage in it, no heartbreak, just evidence, because I didn't need him to tell me why. I needed him to see that I knew. He called me from Janelle's house. I could hear her voice in the background, low, annoyed, not enough to make out the words, but enough to tell me this wasn't a conversation he planned to have alone. His voice cracked as soon as I answered. That fake casual tone he always used when he was cornered. "Hey, what's going on? You've been acting weird lately." Weird, that's what he called it. I didn't say much, just one line. "I visited your mom." Silence, not even a breath. I waited, then added she looked peaceful. That's when the air shifted. I could hear him inhale, sharp and quick. A shuffle on the other end, like he was moving to another room, trying to get out of earshot. "What does that mean?" he said, but it was already too late for questions. I hung up, not out of anger, just because the conversation was over before it started. I'd already buried the fantasy. Now I was just handing him the shovel. He showed up that night. Didn't call first. Just drove straight to my place, parked crooked in front of the building like he'd left the car running, like this was an emergency and not a reckoning. He knocked, then pounded, then begged, "Tess, please open the door." I watched him through the peephole. His hands were shaking. Keys in one, phone in the other. his voice cracking like he wasn't sure which lie to lead with. "It's not what you think," he said, over and over. Like repetition would dilute the meaning, like it wasn't exactly what I thought. I didn't open the door, I didn't speak. I just stood there, quiet, while he unraveled on the other side. He sat on the front step for a while, talking to himself, maybe rehearsing, maybe unraveling. Then, finally, he left. No threats, no apologies, just the click of his car door and the red glow of taillights disappearing down the street. And that silence, the first one I didn't feel guilty for. I sent the photo collage the next morning, to both of them. No caption, no subject line, just the files. Grave, obituary, Venmo logs, her Instagram stories, his texts. My notes, their lies, sent from my personal account. No burner, no drama, just a clean, deliberate send. I watched the time tick by after hitting send. 5 minutes, 10, then my phone lit up, missed call from Marcus, then another. Then a voicemail, his voice tight, half breathing, half blaming. "You don't understand what you've done," he said. "Please don't make this worse." Then Janelle calls, 3 of them straight to voicemail. Then a text, "We need to talk. You misunderstood everything." Then silence, just like that. No more excuses, no more performances, no more pity, just a void where their story used to be. And it didn't scare me. It felt like freedom. 2 weeks later, Janelle reached out. Not with a rant, not with blame, just a single message, short and stripped of whatever mask she'd worn when she first shook my hand at that bar. "I didn't know. You saved me from years of this. Thank you." No emojis, no signature. I stared at it for a long time, wondering how much of her own lie she had believed. If she thought she was the only one, if she thought he was mourning someone instead of using her name as a free pass. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, but because I didn't need to be pulled into whatever version of the story she was trying to write now. She had her exit. I'd already taken mine. Whatever she did with the truth wasn't mine to manage. What mattered was that she had it, that he couldn't hide behind it anymore, and that I no longer carried any part of it for him. The shovel's still in my trunk, right next to the emergency kit and an old blanket I've meant to throw out for months. It's red, cheap. The kind you give a kid to build sandcastles or plant tomatoes. I kept it, not as a threat, not as a symbol, just as a reminder. I didn't bury anything, but I unearthed everything. Today, I tossed the dead flowers I'd left on June's grave. They'd gone brittle, stems curling like they'd been scorched. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything, really. Just a faint, distant clarity, like waking from a dream where someone kept whispering a story you didn't ask to hear. Marcus hasn't called again. Janelle hasn't followed up. My phone's quieter now. Lighter. Sometimes I still catch myself glancing toward the door at night, listening for footsteps that won't come. That muscle memory takes time to kill, but I sleep, I breathe, I wake without wondering who he's lying to. And when I drive past the exit to her old neighborhood, I don't flinch. I just keep going. Because some men fake grief to build escape routes. But I built a map out of their lies, and I found my way out. I didn't mean to keep the shovel. But when I cleaned out the trunk a week later, there it was, wedged between a crumpled poncho and an old pair of sneakers I hadn't worn in years. I reached for it, then stopped. Let it stay. It wasn't sentimental, wasn't symbolic. It was just a thing that had been there the day I stopped asking questions and started pulling up the truth. A quiet tool, plastic, bright, incongruous against the weight of what I'd uncovered, but it worked. It reminded me I didn't have to bury pain to move on from it, so I kept it. That afternoon, I tossed the dead flowers from June's grave into a dumpster behind the grocery store, pulled the petals out one by one like I was finishing something, not mourning, not forgiving, just letting go. I walked back to the car without looking over my shoulder. No texts, no voicemails, no apologies waiting in drafts. And in the rearview mirror, my own eyes looked back at me, tired, yes, but sharp. Awake. The way you look when you finally crawl out of someone else's story. I didn't bury anyone, but I unearthed everything. And I'm not done digging. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.